So picture this. I wake up one morning, turn on my faucet, and nothing. No water, just dead silence from my well. At first, I thought it was some usual technical glitch. Maybe the pump had gone out or something. But as the day went on, I realized something way stranger was going on. Turns out the HOA had shut off my well water. Yep, just like that. No warning, no explanation. At first, I was shocked and pretty frustrated. I mean, this is my water, my property. How can they just cut me off like that? Here's where it gets even crazier. I start digging and find out that somehow I had unknowingly leased my well water rights to the local fire department. Say what? I never signed any papers, never had a conversation about it, but somehow, that well I've depended on for years was tied up in some deal I didn't even know existed. And the HOA. They say it's all legal and above board. But to me, feels like I'm being punished for something I never agreed to. The whole situation turned my world upside down suddenly. I was left without water, stuck in a fight I didn't expect, and dealing with neighbors who seemed split on whose side to take. There's tension, confusion, and a whole lot of questions I need answers to. How did this lease even happen? Can the HOA really do this? And what happens next when the fire department needs that water? I'm about to share everything how this all unfolded, the back and forth with the HOA, and what it means for me and my family. But right now, I'm stuck wondering, will I ever get my water back? Or is this just the beginning of a much bigger fight? Stick around, because this story is just getting started. So here's how things got even more confusing. I moved into this neighborhood a few years ago, loving the peace and quiet, and that well water was a big part of why was reliable, clean, and honestly, kind of a perk that not everyone has. I never really thought twice about it until now. The HOA seemed pretty standard at first, rules about lawn care, parking, stuff like that. But I guess behind the scenes, there were deals and agreements happening that I didn't even know about. When I asked around, some neighbors hinted that the fire department had been negotiating water access for a while, trying to secure a backup supply in case of emergencies. Makes sense, right? Firefighters need water, especially in areas where hydrants might not reach. But what nobody mentioned was that this arrangement somehow involved using my well water. And the worst part? The HOA claimed I had signed a lease agreement years ago. But I have zero memory of that. I dug through my paperwork, emails. Anything I could find, nothing showed up. This whole mystery felt like a trap closing in. The HOA was firm, saying the lease was legally binding and I had no right to water until the fire department said so. I felt powerless. Imagine being cut off from your own well water because of some contract you never agreed to. The frustration was overwhelming. I started wondering if I was missing something, or if this was just a case of the HOA using their power unfairly. Meanwhile, the fire department hasn't been clear either. Are they actively using the water now, or is it just sitting there, waiting for a crisis? And what happens if there's a real emergency and the water isn't enough? These questions kept me up at night. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, not just for me, but for my family and everyone else who might be affected. But with so much secrecy and no straightforward answers, I realized this was going to be a long, tough battle. And honestly, I wasn't sure who I could trust as the days went by without water. The situation started to affect more than just my daily routine. Simple things like cooking, cleaning, even watering the plants became a challenge. My family was stressed, and I could see the frustration growing in their eyes. It wasn't just about inconvenience anymore, it felt like a violation of our basic needs. I kept thinking, how can something so essential be tied up in a bureaucratic mess between the HOA and the fire department? It just didn't sit right. Then there were the neighbors. Some seemed sympathetic, but others were oddly distant or even took the HOA's side, saying things like it's for the greater good or we all have to make sacrifices. That hurt. It made me question if I was the only one being targeted or if this was just how power worked around here. One neighbor even mentioned that the HOA had quietly increased fees recently, possibly to cover costs related to this water deal. Suddenly, this wasn't just about my well, it was about control, money, and who gets to decide what resources we can access. I also started hearing whispers about the fire department's involvement. Apparently, they needed a secure water source for firefighting efforts, especially after a few near misses in the area. While I understand the importance of safety, it felt like my well was being used as a bargaining chip without my consent. The fire department's silence wasn't helping either. They wouldn't answer my calls or clarify what their exact role was in this lease agreement. To make matters worse, the HOA sent a formal letter warning that any attempts to bypass the shutoff could lead to fines or legal action. I was caught in this tense standoff between needing water to live, an HOA holding all the cards, and a fire department that might be using my well as a secret lifeline. The more I dug, the murkier it all became. I knew I couldn't back down, but every step forward felt like walking deeper into a complicated web. What would happen next? That part was still anyone's guess. Every day that passed without water felt like the pressure was tightening around me. My family's patience was wearing thin, and even the simplest tasks became uphill battles. I tried reaching out again, HOA, board members, neighbors, the fire department, but each conversation left me more confused and frustrated. The HOA stuck to their script, repeating that the lease was legal and that they were just enforcing the rules. The fire department stayed quiet, their silence louder than any explanation. One evening, I caught wind of a secret meeting between the HOA and fire department officials. It was supposed to be private, but somehow, word got around. I realized they were planning something bigger, maybe permanent control over our water sources. The thought sent chills down my spine. Was this about safety, or was it about power? Were they trying to use emergency services as a cover to take away a resource that should have been mine all along? Tensions in the neighborhood started boiling. Some neighbors rallied behind me, offering support and urging the HOA to be more transparent. Others warned me to back off, hinting that this fight could get messy. Meanwhile, the threat of fines for tampering with the shutoff hung over my head like a dark cloud. I felt trapped between protecting my family's basic needs and facing potential legal trouble. Then came the moment when I found out the fire department had actually tested the water supply without telling me, using it in drills that drained what little was left. It felt like a betrayal. My well wasn't just leased, it was being used without my knowledge or consent, and the HOA was letting it happen. I was running out of options and time. The fight had escalated from a simple dispute to something much bigger, and the next move could change everything. But what would that move be? The answer was hanging just out of reach, and the tension was unbearable. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, a new twist blindsided me. I received an anonymous message, no name, no number, just a short note saying, "Check the property records. You're not the only one leasing water rights here." At first, I brushed it off as a prank or someone trying to mess with me. But something about it didn't sit right. So I decided to dig deeper. As I pored over the property and water rights documents, I uncovered something shocking. Several other homeowners in the neighborhood had similar leases tied to their wells, all linked to the fire department through the HOA. It wasn't just my well being used as a secret water source. This was a neighborhood-wide arrangement, completely hidden from most residents. The HOA wasn't just shutting off my water. They were controlling a critical resource for multiple families, under a lease that many didn't even know existed. The stakes suddenly felt way higher. This wasn't a simple dispute anymore. It was about access to water itself, a vital resource that could affect everyone's safety and well-being. I started to realize the fire department and HOA might be using this water control to strengthen their power over the community, with very little transparency. And if that wasn't enough, rumors began swirling that the HOA planned to increase fees or penalties linked to these water leases, making it even harder for residents to push back. With this new revelation, the tension between neighbors grew. Some felt betrayed, while others were too scared to speak up, worried about fines or retaliation. Meanwhile, I was stuck in the middle fighting for my family's water while uncovering a much bigger, more complicated battle over who really controls our community's most precious resource. And with no clear allies and the clock ticking, I knew the fight was far from over. What would come next was anyone's guess, and it felt like the calm before a storm. After uncovering the hidden leases tying multiple wells to the fire department, I knew I had to confront the HOA head-on. I gathered the neighbors who were willing to stand with me, and together, we demanded answers at the next HOA meeting. The room was tense, faces tight with worry, whispers filling the air as the board members tried to stay calm. I laid out everything: the secret leases, the shutoff, the unauthorized use of our water. The evidence was clear, and after that intense meeting, things slowly started to shift. The HOA couldn't ignore the mounting pressure from the community anymore. They began rolling back some of their harshest policies, including restoring full access to well water for everyone affected. The fire department also stepped up, agreeing to be more transparent about their water use and promising to communicate openly with residents moving forward. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was a start. In the weeks that followed, neighbors who had been hesitant before started sharing their own stories about confusing agreements, sudden shutoffs, and feeling powerless. Together, we organized community meetings to push for clearer rules and fairer treatment. It felt empowering to finally be heard after months of frustration and silence. The whole ordeal taught me a lot about how important it is to stay informed and question things that don't seem right, especially when it comes to basic resources like water. Looking back, I realized this fight wasn't just about a well or a lease. It was about standing up for what's right and holding those in power accountable. Water is more than just a utility. It's life, and no one should have that taken away without a voice in the matter. I'm grateful for the support from my family and neighbors who stood by me, even when things got tough. While the HOA and fire departments still have work to do to rebuild trust, I'm hopeful the community is stronger because of this. If you're watching this and dealing with similar issues, remember, you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest battles bring the most important changes. Thanks for following along. Stay curious, stay strong, and don't let anyone shut off what's yours without a fight.